Welcome to our Good Friday worship service with Plymouth Park United Methodist Church. My name is Marcus Womack. I'm the pastor here. Thank you for joining us for this meditative service of song and scripture and prayer as we meet Jesus at the cross and long for the hope of Easter. As you'll see throughout this service, many of the components were used from last year's service because we are still in a time when we cannot gather in the ways that we long to. I pray this is a time to meditate over the past year and share in our griefs and our longings and our hopes with Christ who stands alongside us. And I hope to worship with you on Easter Sunday. You can join us online through social media or our website, or join us at 11 a.m. in our church parking lot, where we will gather outdoors in person with our masks and share in Holy Communion and share in the joy of the risen Lord. Now may our hearts, minds, and lives meet Jesus at the cross as we encounter this Good Friday. Hello, my name is Marcus Womack, pastor here at Plymouth Park United Methodist Church, and I welcome you to this service for Good Friday. During this time together, we will experience music, hymns, scripture, prayer, time to truly connect with the presence of God in this holy day. On Good Friday, we feel the weight of this season, particularly on this Good Friday when we are separated and not able to gather together in this space. But I pray you know the good news that at the cross, Christ meets us in our darkest moments. At the cross, Christ meets us in our places of deepest wilderness. At the cross, Christ meets us where we feel most alone and says, I am with you. Our service this evening has been prepared by our music ministry team. I give thanks to Dr. Michael Lindstrom and Ken Surley for their work in preparing this. I also give thanks for those members of our choir who offer their voices and their presence to lead us in this time. Our scriptures this evening will be led by Holly Holloway, and our associate pastor, Reverend Audrua Welch Malvaez, will assist in leading our liturgy as well. I invite you to join us in this time of worship by offering your hearts, minds, and lives to be open to all that Good Friday offers us, as Christ meets us and offers everything that he is for us to be whole.
Good morning. I'm Reverend Audrua Welch Malvaez. I am so glad that you are joining us in worship today. Will you join me now as we begin our worship with the call to worship? We have been here before, a place of grieving and mourning. We have been here before, a night that seems it won't end. We have been here before, knee-deep in fear, knee-deep in doubt. We have been here before, Good Friday, the night Christ died. So once again, we find ourselves here, in community, in God's arms. Where else would we go when the world falls apart? Let us worship Holy God. If any of you ever miss curfew, you might know the feeling of trying to sneak back in the house, tiptoeing past mom and dad's room. Maybe you carried your shoes in your hands, trying to be stealthy, hoping they didn't catch you. In many ways, we treat Good Friday the same way, like a teenager trying to avoid curfew. We long to tiptoe past this painful day. We long to avoid the confrontation and the hurt. We want to take off our shoes and slide right past the despair of the cross and onward to the joyful, empty tomb. But you and I both know there is no resurrection without crucifixion. There are no flowers without the rain. There is no love without a little heartache. It's cliche, I get it. But in this case today, family, it's true. So in a moment, I want to invite you to join me in prayer as we take this time to intentionally be still right here with both feet on the ground. God is with us. Pray with me. Holy God, we admit that we struggle with this day. We struggle with Good Friday for 3 reasons. First, no one likes to see another person suffer. And on this day, we are face to face with the cross. And your suffering is hard for us to bear. Second, the pain of this day reminds us of the pain of past and present days. And our own pain is a lot to bear. Third, we are reminded of the suffering we cast onto others, which means that we have to confront the pain that we have caused. So forgive us for skirting around the edges of this day. Forgive us for averting our eyes and avoiding the sinking feeling in our chests. Forgive us for distracting ourselves from the hurt. And forgive us for the ways in which we add to the suffering of this world. We do not like to be here, this place of grief and despair, at the foot of the cross, face to face with violence. And yet, here is where we are. Lord, forgive us, then use us for your good. We are your children, and nothing can separate us from your love. The long night of the soul, the spaces and times when despair weighs heavy on us like a blanket. These seasons of life are real. We refuse to believe that the pain and suffering hold the last word because we believe in Jesus of Nazareth, whose narrative didn't stop here either. There was a lot of shouting on that crucifixion day. And 2,000 years later, we are still shouting, and the world is still filled with violence. The air feels so full of words, so full of hurt. I imagine you know the feeling, God. So today we ask that you would quiet us in this moment. Quiet our minds, quiet our insecurities and our distractions. Quiet our fears. Quiet us to hear your voice and speak to us now. We are listening. Amen.
With Jesus went forth with his disciples across the Kidron Valley, where there was a garden, which he and his disciples entered. Now Judas, who betrayed him, also knew this place, for Jesus often met there with his disciples. So Judas, procuring a band of soldiers and other officers from the chief priests and the Pharisees, went there with lanterns and torches and weapons. Then Jesus, knowing all that was to befall him, came forward and said to them, "Whom do you seek?" They answered him, "Jesus of Nazareth." Jesus said to them, "I am he." Judas, who betrayed him, was standing with them. When he said to them, "I am he," they drew back and fell to the ground. Again he asked them, "Whom do you seek?" And they said, "Jesus of Nazareth." Jesus answered, "I told you that I am he. So if you seek me, let these men go." This was to fulfill the word which he had spoken, "I did not lose a single one of those whom you gave me." Then Simon Peter, having a sword, drew it and struck the high priest's slave and cut off his right ear. The slave's name was Malchus. Jesus said to Peter, "Put your sword into its sheath. Shall I not drink the cup which the Father has given me?" So the band of soldiers and their captain and the officers of the Judean authorities seized Jesus and bound him. First they led him to Annas, for he was the father-in-law of Caiaphas, who was high priest that year. It was Caiaphas who had given counsel to the religious authorities that it was expedient that one man should die for the people. Simon Peter followed Jesus, and so did another disciple. As this disciple was known to the high priest, he entered the court of the high priest along with Jesus, while Peter stood outside the door. So the other disciple, who was known to the high priest, went out and spoke to the woman who guarded the gate, and he brought Peter in. The woman who guarded the gate said to Peter, "Are you not also one of this man's disciples?" He said, "I am not." Now the servants and officers had made a charcoal fire because it was cold, and they were standing and warming themselves. Peter also was with them, standing and warming himself.
Shall
The high priest then questioned Jesus about his disciples and his teaching. Jesus answered him, I have spoken openly to the world. I have always taught in synagogues and in the temple, where all Jewish people come together. I have said nothing secretly. Why do you ask me? Ask those who have heard me what I said to them. They know what I said. When he said this, one of the officers standing by struck Jesus with his hand, saying, Is that how you answer the high priest? Jesus answered him, If I have spoken wrongly, bear witness to the wrong. But if I have spoken rightly, why do you strike me? Annas then sent him bound to Caiaphas, the high priest. Now Simon Peter was standing and warming himself. They said to him, "Are you not also one of his disciples?" He denied it and said, "I am not." One of the servants of the high priest, a kinsman of the man whose ear Peter had cut off, asked, "Did I not see you in the garden with him?" Peter again denied it, and at once the cock crowed. Then they led Jesus from the house of Caiaphas to Pilate's headquarters. It was early. They themselves did not enter the headquarters so that they might not be defiled, but might eat of the Passover. So Pilate went out to them and said, "What accusation do you bring of this man?" They answered him, "If this man were not an evildoer, we would not have handed him over." Pilate said to them, "Take him yourselves and judge him by your own law." The religious authorities said to him, "It is not lawful for us to put any man to death." This was to fulfill the word which Jesus had spoken, to show by what death he would die. Pilate entered the headquarters again and called Jesus and said to him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Jesus answered, "Do you say this of your own accord, or did others say it to you about me?" Pilate answered, "Am I a Jew? Your own nation and the chief priests have handed you over to me. What have you done?" Jesus answered, "My kingship is not of this world. If my kingship were of this world, my servants would fight that I might not be handed over to the religious authorities. But my kingship is not from the world." Pilate said to him, "So you are a king?" Jesus answered, "You say that I am a king. For this I was born, and for this I have come into the world, to bear witness to the truth. Everyone who is of the truth hears my voice." Pilate said to him, "What is the truth?" After Pilate had said this, he went to the religious authorities again and told them, "I find no crime in him, but you have a custom that I should release one man for you at the Passover. Will you have me release for you the King of the Jews?" They cried out, "Not this man, but Barabbas." Now Barabbas was a robber. Then Pilate took Jesus and scourged him. And the soldiers plaited a crown of thorns and put it on his head and arrayed him in a purple robe. They came up to him saying, "Hail, King of the Jews!" They struck him with their hands. Pilate went out again and said to them, "See, I am bringing him to you, that you may know that I find no crime in him." So Jesus came out wearing the crown of thorns and the purple robe. Pilate said to them, "Behold the man." When the chief priests and the officers saw him, they cried out, "Crucify him! Crucify him!" Pilate said to them, "Take him yourselves and crucify him, for I find no crime in him." The religious authorities answered him, "We have a law, and by that law he ought to die because he has made himself the Son of God." When Pilate heard these words, he was the more afraid. He entered the headquarters again and said to Jesus, "Where are you from?" But Jesus gave no answer. Pilate therefore said to him, "You will not speak to me? Do you not know that I have the power to release you and the power to crucify you?" Jesus answered him, "You would have no power over me unless it had been given you from above. Therefore he who delivered me to you has the greater sin." Upon this, Pilate sought to release him, but the religious authorities cried out, "If you release this man, you are not Caesar's friend. Everyone who makes himself a king sets himself against Caesar." When Pilate heard these words, he brought Jesus out and sat down on the judgment seat at a place called the Pavement. Now it was the day of preparation of the Passover, and it was about the 6th hour. He said to the religious authorities, "Behold your king." They cried out, "Away with him! Away with him! Crucify him!" Pilate said to them, "Shall I crucify your king?" The chief priests answered, "We have no king but Caesar." And they handed him over to be crucified. took Jesus, and he went out, bearing his own cross, to the place called the place of a skull, which in Hebrew is called Golgotha. There they crucified him, and with him 2 others, one on either side, and Jesus between them. Pilate also wrote a title and put it on the cross. It read, "Jesus of Nazareth, the King of the Jews." Many of the Judeans read this title, for the place where Jesus was crucified was near the city, and it was written in Hebrew, in Latin, and in Greek. The chief priests then said to Pilate, "Do not write the King of the Jews, but this man said, 'I am the King of the Jews.'" Pilate answered, "What I have written, I have written." When the soldiers had crucified Jesus, they took his garments and made 4 parts, one for each soldier, also his tunic. But the tunic was without seam, woven from top to bottom. So they said to one another, "Let us not tear it, but cast lots for it to see whose it shall be." And this was to fulfill the scripture, "They parted my garments among them, and for my clothing they cast lots." So the soldiers did this. But standing by the cross of Jesus were his mother and his mother's sister Mary and Mary Magdalene. When Jesus saw his mother and the disciple whom he loved standing near, he said to his mother, "Woman, behold your son." Then he said to the disciple, "Behold your mother." And from that hour the disciple took her into his home. After this, Jesus, knowing that all was now finished, said, to fulfill the scripture, I thirst. A bowl full of vinegar stood there, so they put a sponge full of the vinegar on hyssop and held it to his mouth. When Jesus had received the vinegar, he said, it is finished. And he bowed his head and gave up the spirit. Since it was the day of preparation, in order to prevent the bodies from remaining on the cross on the Sabbath, for that Sabbath was a high day. The religious authorities asked Pilate that their legs might be broken and that they might be taken away. So the soldiers came and broke the legs of the first and of the other who had been crucified with him. But when they came to Jesus and saw that he was already dead, they did not break his legs. But one of the soldiers pierced his side with a spear, and at once there came out blood and water. He who saw it has borne witness. His testimony is true, and he knows that he tells the truth, that you may also believe. For these things took place that the scripture might be fulfilled. Not a bone of him shall be broken. And again another scripture that says, they shall look on him who they have pierced. After this, Joseph of Arimathea, who was a disciple of Jesus, but secretly, for fear of the religious authorities, asked Pilate that he might take away the body of Jesus, and Pilate gave him leave. So he came and took away his body. Nicodemus also, who had at first come to him by night, came bringing a mixture of myrrh and aloes, about 100 pounds weight. They took the body of Jesus and bound it in linen cloths with the spices, as is the custom burial of the Jews. Now in the place where he was crucified there was a garden, and in the garden a new tomb where no one had ever been laid. So because the Jewish day of preparation, as the tomb was close at hand, they laid Jesus there.
worship into the waiting of Holy Saturday before we reach the glory of Easter. The night weeps and covers the earth with her protective arms whispering, "I will hold you." The skies crack and the earth groans as God dies. And the wilderness is truly empty. And there is nothing but silence. The kind of silence that comes when there is no more point to breath. And yet, somehow the rest of us still go on. Breathe with us, O earth. Breathe with us, O sky. Breathe with us, O night. Stay with us as we wait. We wait. We wait. We wait.